LMAO. Who do we trust? Who do we trust to tell us about Dragon's Dogma 2? Does Game Ranks, do they have a video out?
Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing.
Okay.
Just a few years ago, I'd have told you this isn't going to happen, but it's here. I'm playing it. It's Dragon's.
Hang on, we need a... Listen, that may be the auto quality, but that is not what we are getting. Give me the good resolution. Let's go.
Dogma 2, against all odds. The original game from 2012 is a deeply weird, kind of janky experience that was begging for a more refined follow-up that never really materialized until now, almost 12 years later.
Is that
Capcom could have easily taken the safer route and turned this into a medieval fantasy-themed Monster Hunter game, but instead they made a relentlessly faithful follow-up to the original that is still a little weird and a little janky, but utterly enthralling. It is not a perfect game, but Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the most intriguing and exciting AAA games I have played in a very long time. So what the hell even is this game? It's hard to explain if you haven't played the first one. If you have, it's like that. It's an action RPG where you make your character, pick a class, and explore a big open world. On the most basic level, it sounds indistinguishable from most high-profile action RPGs, but this...
I was going to say, this... I'm only going off of what I'm seeing, and a little bit of what I've heard, like, just on, like, Reddit and whatnot. But just from what I'm seeing, it looks like a weird, janky Elden Ring, right? Am I crazy?
Game, it's really not exactly like anything else out there. The combat's a little like Monster Hunter, where a lot of the beasts you take on are these gigantic enemies that you
it's Frodo and Fellowship of the Ring,
etc., etc. But instead of going it alone or with a party of other players, Dragon's Dogma has you team up with 3 pawns. These are AI-controlled allies that have their own complex rules governing their behavior. There is no multiplayer in this game, so if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to find it. I would argue there's plenty of other things to look for, though. There's the quests, which tend to be very open-ended.
I will say, that is really too bad. I think this game was kind of on my radar until I heard that, which this is not my first time hearing that, but earlier, I heard that there's no multiplayer, that's just a single player game. And I don't know what it is, but I feel like I've reached a stage in my life where if something's not multiplayer, it instantly loses like 20 points for me. I don't know if that's fair. But I think, especially now that I'm a PC gamer, I don't know, I just feel that way. Like, I have a PC, it's connected to the internet. Why isn't every game multiplayer? Is a question that a stupid person would ask.
And the extremely systematic game world with day and night cycles and NPCs.
But that's not to say, I mean, I do prefer multiplayer games. It's true.
With schedules. It's sort of like Monster Hunter had a weird baby with Skyrim, but I don't know that accurately captures how odd this game is. It's one of those things where you just have to play it, or at least see it for a while to get what's really going on. Unlike the first game, which took way too long to get you into the open world, this one starts with a short prologue where you create your character using the game's, frankly, really impressive character creation.
Something about like this guy's torso just reminds me of bread. I don't know why.
Creation tools, and then pretty drops you into the game. If you so desire, you can totally ignore the main quest and start exploring in random directions. It's up to you. As an example of just how open this game can be, there's a quest where this soldier is escorting you back to the capital. In any other game, this would be some scripted thing where you're forced to follow this guy, but there's nothing stopping you from going off the beaten path and getting him killed by mistake. And if you fail the quest, there's no restarting. You just have to make your way to the capital on your own. Later on, there's a gate that keeps you from entering a southern section of the map. In any other game, this would be locked by plot progression, but in Dragon's Dogma 2, there's other ways of getting past. There's just a level of freedom you rarely see in a game that is on this scale. There's multiple ways to resolve quests. You can access certain locations earlier than you're supposed to. You can kill plot-critical characters, and everything just keeps going. The actual presentation on all this stuff isn't always that impressive, to be fair. There are a few full cutscenes, but your character is a classic mute RPG protagonist, and most of the dialogue is done through basic text, you know, the old text box technique, and characters just standing somewhere, you know. It's functional, but pretty bare bones compared to the presentation in a lot of other modern RPGs.
I'm not sure what I think of this kind of stuff. You know, I think as I've gotten older, especially, right, I've really come to appreciate voice acting in games, by which I mean I really I actually understand now, as opposed to when I was a dumb kid. I understand how much work it is to get fully voice acted cutscenes in games. Like, it is a whole production, right? Yeah, especially as someone who does now, like, you know, Twitch and YouTube content and stuff. Like, it is a whole production to put like voice acting in a game, especially voice acted cutscenes. Like, because those two things are not the same, right? Having voice acting for certain lines is one thing, but having fully voice acted cutscenes, that's a whole other. Excuse you. That's a whole other thing, right? And it's kind of like understanding how difficult that is has really led me to, well, one, obviously appreciate when it is in games, but also be kind of understanding of like when it's not. Especially games like, you know, like your Dark Souls and your other FromSoft titles, games that don't really have much cutscenes at all, but do have like a lot of dialogue. I think that's actually fine. I think it is the mark of a talented game creator to put together a game where the story can be told, a compelling story can be told without like big flashy cutscenes and just like very simple dialogue.
The game is just really unusual in that most of the main quests are pretty flat and simple, go here and get that sort of things. Rarely does a main quest even directly force
What the fuck is up with this guy's hair? What am I looking at?
you into a fight. Most of the combat in this game is incidental to exploring rather than a driving force of the story. It's not like Monster Hunter where every main quest is to hunt a new monster. It's more like you're going somewhere and there just so happens to be a monster in your way. Side quests can be a little more complex with multiple possible outcomes depending on what you decide to do. This game never gives you a Bethesda-style drop-down list of choices. The things you do are entirely up to you.
Actually.
Both liberating and potentially frustrating depending on exactly how you jive with it. The game does have a few systems to help you out, though, like the pawns, for example, who, depending on their experience, may be able to guide you during a certain quest. But that usually just boils down to taking you to a specific place, and, I mean, that's it. This can be extremely helpful during certain quests, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to explain any fine details of anything for you. There's also an oracle who's about equally as helpful, and when I say that, what I mean is not that helpful. On the subject of pawns, yes, they're better than they were in the first game, and yes, they don't talk as much. They still talk too much and repeat certain lines a lot, like, do you really need to point out that same ladder every time I pass by it? I don't think you do. But overall, again, they talk a lot less and act more intelligently in battle. Pawns are what make combat in Dragon's Dogma feel unlike any other RPG. Because you're rolling with a team of 3 AI assistants that can only be given 4 vague commands like come here and help, which might make them sound kind of worthless, but if you built a solid team, they can practically win battles for you. You can obtain pawns from these rift stones. There's one main pawn you design yourself, and then you can bring along 2 guest pawns, which are the ones you obtain by using rift stones and spending in-game currency called rift crystals. Pawns on your own level are always free, but higher level pawns cost more, and depending on your settings, the ones you see in the rift will either be pawns created by other players or pawns created by Capcom.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I heard a lot about like the whole pawn system, and when the first time I heard about it, I thought, okay, you get little AI companions. That's, you know, pretty par for the course for any for like any RPG, right? I mean, Skyrim had that shit. Fallout, loads of games, right? But it does seem like a little bit more involved than I initially thought.
A whole lot to talk about here with these things, how they work, what they do, but I'm going to give you the short version here and say that they work. They work really well, actually, and while you'll be swapping out guest pawns a lot because they can't gain experience in your world, finding new and better pawns is always satisfying. Another thing I appreciate is there's surprisingly not that much menu busy work in this game. There's basic crafting, but you're only making a few specific items. There's skills and different jobs to unlock, but those are only accessed at certain
I actually don't mind that.
And
I think
there's a lot of different armor and sets of weapons.
I think that
there's no random.
Jesus Christ, my clicking finger is out of control. I think that simpler crafting systems are actually totally fine. I think common pitfall that happens in games, actually, and this might be kind of a hot take. I think not every game needs to have like a super involved crafting system. All right. Sometimes they throw that shit in games and it's like, dude, I'm busy doing something else. Your game is good. Why are you trying to take me away from the part of the game that I want to play to try to get me to understand like this really convoluted and not even convoluted, but sometimes it's like, sometimes it can be really well thought out crafting system. I just don't want to do it because I'm doing the other parts of the game. I don't know. That's just how I feel. Not every game's like that, but yeah.
Randomization on stats or anything. It's not a loot game. You're only getting so much stuff, and it's a big relief. So most of your time, get this, is spent doing the actual fun parts of an RPG, fighting monsters and exploring the world. There's a lot to explore in this game, too. The world map is very, very large. It's full of little secrets and tons of unique little things, too. They clearly put a lot of effort into making this an enjoyable world just to be in. It's dense, without resorting to covering the map in Ubisoft-style icons. So a lot of what you end up doing feels natural.
Holy shit.
Signs of disloyalty should be reported to the democracy officer.
Right here, watch. Hang on. Can you shut the fuck up, Helldivers? Jesus. Watch this right here. The cape clipping through the shield. This is like, maybe this is just a me thing, but oh my god. At some point in the next like 10 years, or no, just in the next like 5 years, someone needs to figure this out. How can we have things in games stop clipping? Because it's just been around forever and it has just annoyed the fuck out of me, man. Like, and I get it. Listen, I can be forgiving, okay? I can be understanding, all right? I was talking earlier about, you know, dialogue in games and how like not everything needs to be voice acted, blah, 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 blah. But holy shit. At some point, someone needs to figure out the technology. I know we have it. I know we have it somewhere. The technology to stop things, every goddamn thing from clipping in a video game. Jesus. Can we get someone on it? Get James Cameron on it, all right? Just, I can't do it anymore. I won't do it.
Soft style icons.
But just watch that cape clip right through the shield.
So a lot of what you end up doing feels natural because you're the one who found it. You're not just marking objectives off a checklist. You're doing things because you want to do them. At least that's what I assume. Maybe there's something wrong with you. I don't know. But yeah. And there's tons of cool stuff to find. I haven't played a game that rewards your curiosity like this since Elden Ring. Like, there's some really, really crazy stuff tucked away in the corners of this world. And yeah, while you're wandering around, you are going to deal with a pretty constant onslaught of enemies. Mostly some combination of wolves, goblins, bandits, harpies, with a random giant monster thrown in a good measure like a cyclops or a griffin. The world is just dense with enemies and ambushes, so it can get a little exhausting after a while. I'm not going to say it can't. It'd be a bigger issue if the combat wasn't so damn good. And make no mistake, it's very good. No matter whether you're playing as a warrior, an archer, a thief.
Every time I see him climb up on these things, that is so cool. Like, that's so interesting. That you can actually climb up on these like larger enemies.
Mage, or one of the more exotic hybrid classes, you're going to have a ton of tools to work with. Every class has a few basic attacks, but the many special moves you can unlock really change how your character works. As you rank up your class, you unlock flashier, more over-the-top abilities, and it really works well. One important thing to keep in mind is that if there's one thing this game isn't, it's Dark Souls. There's no dodge button by default and no lock-on. So how you end up playing is pretty fundamentally different. You can climb on top of monsters to stab them or grab their legs and push them over. Everything's fully affected by physics, which can sometimes work out in your favor and sometimes really work against you. Battles can be chaotic and crazy. The terrain you're fighting on can make a huge difference in battle. As you explore and fight monsters, your overall health slowly drains from scratch.
Yeah, I will say, like, the combat, just from how it looks, right? It definitely looks like one of those things that I need to get a feel for to give like a solid judgment on, because it looks crazy and chaotic, and obviously the clipping, right? And like the, you know, weird standing on weird slight obstacles on the ground and just things that like would probably drive me crazy in some games. But and this video, obviously, you know, he's hyping up the combat, and I've heard other people like praise it. It looks like it could be good. I don't know, but it definitely feels like the kind of thing, or it looks like the kind of thing that I want to get a feel for before I, give a, before I, solidify my opinion.
Damage, and the only way to heal it is to rest at an inn or make camp. The addition of camping also makes Dragon's Dogma.
I will say this menu, like the texture and the color of this menu and stuff, is so Dark Souls or Elden Ring or just FromSoft shit in general.
To an obvious pick over the original. You're no longer forced to wander around in the pitch black night, and it doesn't just restore your health without having to take a lengthy trip back to town for an inn. It does other stuff. You got the prerequisite cooking menu, only this time you're cooking real meat. It's such an odd but charming inclusion.
Holy shit. Bro. Holy fuck. What the fuck? This is the most... Why does Capcom always do this with their games? Like the food in Monster Hunter, legitimately, like even if I'm stuffed to the fucking brim, I always get hungry. When I see those fucking cats cook up a chicken or whatever. This looks amazing. I'm crazy. Okay.
Make all the cooking cutscenes full motion video, like actual video footage of cooking of meat. It's another way this game is just doing its own thing. And there's a lot of combat because there is a lot of wandering around.
I'm so sorry for pausing this so much, but I think it says a lot about this game that one of the longest pauses I've made in this video is just to like do a little cumin over the fucking meat cooking cutscene. All right, let's play.
There's very few options for fast travel. There are ox carts, which can transport you between major cities. And it's a very rare, expensive stones that can be used to instantly teleport, but that's it. Which means you're going to be doing a lot of hiking, which would be worse, but the world is, it's honestly so beautiful to explore, and the combat is so enjoyable. Having to walk through certain parts multiple times doesn't quite have the sting it does in certain other games. This is a stunning game at times, too. The environments are incredibly detailed overall, and at any given moment, you'll be at a grand vista that's hard not to just stop and stare at for a while. I'm playing it on PS5, and while the visuals are excellent for the console, the frame rate isn't quite there. If you're on the wilderness, it mostly stays above 30, but in certain dense areas like the main city, the frame rate's going to tank. I wish the game had some kind of performance mode to make up for this, but it doesn't. If you want 60 frames per second, Dragon's Dogma 2, it's not going to be on console. That's not happening. That's not how you're going to get it. You got to get it on PC. But I'll also say that the 30 frames per second didn't really bother me. It didn't hurt the experience of playing it. At the very least, the performance is a lot better than the original game on Xbox 360. Now that game, that was a chugger. As someone who's usually pretty sensitive about games that aren't 60 frames per second, this one really wasn't so bad. It might be that I've played the original a lot, and this feels a lot like the original, except for it doesn't crap out the way that the original did all the time. And like there's some games that target 30 frames per second that feel like they're in slow motion or underwater. This game feels really responsive at that frame rate, so it's pretty tolerable, at least to me. I haven't seen any bugs. Like, I don't love that frame rate, but man, not one bug so far. That's amazing for how complex this game is. I've definitely seen a lot of oddness, like certain...
That's almost unbelievable. Like, I almost don't believe him. For a game like this, with... I mean, come on, you've been watching the video with me, right? Like, just, like, all the weird things that have been going on. Like, the climbing on enemies and... just the way that like he interacts with objects in the environment, it just seems so janky. Like the idea that there's no bugs, I almost don't believe it.
Enemies barely hanging off a ledge or NPCs shuffling into place. Or
oh yeah, look at that guy right there. That ox just running in motion in place on the rock.
Yeah, awkwardly facing the wrong direction to talk during a quest or something, but that doesn't mean it's not working right. That's just a little bit of that jank. I kind of expected that. Bugs and jank are different things. And there were parts of the game where I thought maybe like a trigger was missing, maybe a real bug, but wrong. That was just me being dumb. I'm just so used to RPGs hand-holding you through quests that when a game makes me figure it out, it feels wrong, which I guess is kind of really sad, actually. But it makes me really happy that this game trusts me. I don't know. There's something about that makes me like it more, even though it might be a little bit more frustrating. I do think that is going to cause some people not necessarily to jive with the game. It does expect a lot out of you. Like I said, I like that, but not everybody is going to. Many things are they're not explained, or just expect you to experiment to figure it out. And the actual main plot isn't super interesting, at least at first. It eventually goes to some pretty wild places, but the first dozen or so hours, there's not a really large amount of attempt of getting you invested. It's one of those games that's so confident in what it is that it doesn't even try to rope in new players. And to me, it's so good. The lack of tutorials, the straightforward opening, the unmarked secrets, open-ended quests. It expects a lot from the player. It trusts the player to be able to do those things. And if you're willing to go with it, there's a whole lot of fun to be had here. They did not dumb it down to capture a wider audience. Shit. It's a game that's unlike almost every other open world game out there.
Jeez.
And while there are some boring and awkward moments, it's overall a game that I would highly recommend to anybody who loved the original or wants an open world game that's a little less formulaic than we normally get. It's frustrating and it is confusing at times, but it's the good kind.
Okay. I don't know what kind of fucking mithril he's wearing. Ain't no way he's alive after all that. What the fuck?
Kind of frustrating and confusing. The kind that keeps you coming back for more, because when you figure it out, you're like, thank you, Capcom, for letting me do it. I did it. Thank you. It's an excellent game overall. But what the hell's going on with the generic fantasy music over the title screen? What the hell is that? I don't understand that. Maybe you do. Leave a comment. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video.
Yeah, of course.
I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero.
Oh my gosh,
we'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.
On Game Ranks, you say? That's crazy. Man, I was looking for a little bit more information. A little bit more would have been nice. Also, I did notice that was his review of the game, but he didn't talk about any of the big like microtransaction issues that people have been having. Which I say kind of trepidatiously because I haven't played the game. I haven't looked that much into it. All I've seen is like people on Twitter talking about like, it cost me $3 to re-edit my character, which, you know, I mean, it sounds crazy, but who can say, really? Let's go to, let's go. Nope. No, thank you. I don't want to play that right now. Oh, here, you guys can't see. Let's go to the store and let's see. Yum, 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 yum. Oh, it's right here. Hello. Dragon D's nuts too. Dragging these nuts to your moms. All right. Oh, interesting. So the reviews right now are mixed actually, but I remember checking them this weekend and they were very negative. Yeah, no, I remember looking at the reviews this weekend after the game came out. So opening weekend, and they were pretty negative. Let's go ahead and take a look though. Ooh. Most helpful reviews. Ooh, not recommended. Not recommended. Product refunded. Yikes. Not recommended. Ooh. You'll never wonder where a ladder is again. That sounds like... that sounds like the pawns pointed that out to him. TLDR, Dragon's Dogma 2 is a great game that's tied down by poor performance and undermined by a lot of the monetization that's haphazardly tacked on thanks to Capcom's, missing an apostrophe, greed. I want to give a positive review for this game so badly, but I cannot in good faith do that given the current state of the game, specifically relating to performance issues on the PC port and the really weird monetization Capcom included with the game. The game runs very inconsistently, and I struggle to break 60 FPS in the open world, and struggle even more to break 40 when in populated areas. This is with the help of DLSS and general graphics menu tweaking. As for the microtransactions, I'd say It's true that they are entirely unnecessary and you can earn everything in game with ease in order to avoid them. That does not, however, excuse their existence for two simple reasons. It remains predatory for those with impulses to spend money on the games they play, and that it runs counter to a lot of unique gameplay aspects of Dragon's Dogma 2 as well, i.e. fast travel being limited commodity. But you can just bypass that with in-game purchases if you really wanted to, despite it not being that expensive in-game anyways. At its core, Dragon's Dogma 2, Dragon's Dogma 2. I think I said that right the first time. I don't know why. I don't know why I went through all that. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a game I really enjoy and I'll probably continue to play because of that. But as it stands, given the game's launch and Capcom's half-assed tacking on of a whole laundry list of microtransactions right at the game's launch, I simply don't feel right in recommending it for the time being. This certainly isn't the first time Capcom has done this, but for me, it feels like the straw that broke the ox's back, and I'm tired of constantly overlooking it or just saying that it's the norm for Capcom now. It's insulting to their community, and especially to their own devs who probably worked their asses off to make unique games like this, only to be overlooked by executives when it comes to widening their quarterly reports by any means possible, even at the cost of their fans' goodwill and the creative vision behind their games. Wow. You know what, guys? That was an incredibly helpful review. Boom. So the purpose of going through some of this stuff today on stream was to figure out if I am going to have to buy this game or not. I'd really like to not. I'd really rather not. But I think I might have to. We'll see. Thing is, I really like every time, you know how when people talk about games and they're like recommending a game, they always give you the, oh, it's like if Dark Souls and Pokemon had a baby. Oh, it's like if blah, 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 and blah, blah had a baby, right? And so, you know, I think obviously because it's Capcom, right? People have like Monster Hunter comparisons, which is a game I really love. Monster Hunter World was such a fantastic game. Super, super kino. All right. And people compare this to that game quite a bit. But obviously, like with a very different spin, right? The video we watched, the guy's talking about, you know, it's combat-wise maybe similar, but, you know, not every mission is about taking out a monster. It's more like RPG kind of missions, which is really cool. You know what? We'll keep an eye on it. That's a video right there. We can turn that whole segment into a video. Nice. God damn it. I'm so good at what I do.